The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André and Jerry, your podcast host. Big thanks Uka the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers, and big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in to another action-packed show. Today we talk with Jerry Carita, who is a producer, worked on many reality television shows, most specifically Comic Book Men, which was something I don't know if I talked about on here before, but Kevin Smith had done it, and it's kind of like Pawn Stars, I guess, but like with comics. And then some of his friends that work in his comic store in New Jersey would have like a roundtable discussion with Kevin about what happened during the week, and then they would sort of have it interstitialized with, I don't know if that's a word, but it is now, with people bringing in, comics and selling them, or stage sort of celebrity appearances where they come in to buy certain comics. And and then they'd have like guest appearances from other people that would pop by. And it was a ton of fun. If you're really into this world, it was a nostalgia dive. You got to see some vintage toys, comics, other things, and just kind of celebrate the medium a bit. And I don't know, I really dug it. It was a ton of fun. And it was on right around the Walking Dead slot. That was like AMC was kind of doing some comic book specific stuff to kind of tie in with The Walking Dead, and that was in there. And it was really fun. And Jerry was a part of that, and I believe the first season. And he had a lot of fun stories to share about that series, other things he had done. And now he's getting into comics, and we talk about some of the series he has coming up, specifically one called Cicada Samurai. And I'm not going to tell you anything else, because if that title intrigues you, you're about to find out more. It certainly intrigued me, and interesting story about how it came about. So I really dug it, and I love when I get to talk to creators about the impetus of some of their projects and how it relates to their own life. And Jerry really brought that to the forefront. It's been a busy week for me, trying to catch up on some wrestling. I got a bunch of wrestling going on this week, and trying to catch up on work, which is also busy and hectic and crazy. And people often tell me that I'm the busiest person they know. I think I might be the busiest person I know. But, I do it all because I really love it. This is all stuff I want to do because I really dig doing it. Sometimes it feels a little overwhelming. I'm trying to get better at pacing myself. We're working on it. But one thing is sure, I will always be here to be your host, gentle listener, and I much appreciate you tuning in. So, without much further ado, let's get to my conversation with Jerry Carita. I'm very excited to chat with you. Where are you calling in from?
I'm in New York. I live in Brooklyn.
Oh, wow. That's cool. So I've had a bevy of New York people on lately.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just and I'm getting a bit of a feel. Like, I've been there once. I was talking to James Aquilone, who's like he does a lot of compilation books, and he's a writer. And he was giving me we were talking about when I was younger. I was on a plane from Las Vegas, and we got stuck there for a night, and I went downtown and kind of hung out in Times Square and stuff. And that was sort of the extent of my exposure to New York, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's truly
a cool place. The longer you're here, the more you find like weird corners of the place that like are, filled with your people. Like everyone's got like a group of their own people here.
Yeah, there's a
I
part
grew
of
up here.
Oh, really? So born and raised.
That's right.
Awesome. Wow. Were you always into nerdy stuff as a kid?
Oh yeah. My geek thing growing up was not comics. I never had that like moment, when you're like 12, 13, whatever, and some friend, an older friend hands you that first comic. And so I never had that. I didn't have that until I was 30.
No, really? Oh, no, this is awesome. I love this because most people, it's like some weird uncle or a cousin or some friend, showed him a comic, and that's what set it all off. But I love people that find it later. That's awesome.
I found it much later, and it was because my cousin's a writer, and so I started reading his books, and then also I'm a television producer, and I was working on Comic Book Men, so that's when I started reading them. I fell in love with it there.
What was your nerdy thing as a kid?
TV.
Oh, nice. What were you watching?
Oh, lots of cartoons, big into like I'm an 80s kid, so big into, Thundercats and the Snorks. What were they called? The ones that were like the Smurfs underwater. I love the Smurfs
Yeah,
too. The
they had
Smurf movie was
the
magic too.
big thing. Yeah, out of the top of their
Yeah.
heads. I forgot about those things.
And then
Snorkies?
all the sort of like um there was there were Thundercats, but there was that other thing, the Silver Hawks,
Oh
that
yeah.
was like in
Yep.
space.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Voltron, obviously, all those things. But then when I got older, it was my mom was into Star Wars and Star Trek, so I
Mm,
watched. My first Star Trek was The Next Generation. I watched that whole series with my mom. I watched Deep
nice.
Space Nine. We still watch. I watch all the Star Trek shows on Paramount Plus now, and then my mom and I talk about it. So
That's awesome.
that
I
was my jam.
that's a very defining question in nerd circles is to ask somebody what's their favorite Star Trek show. I feel like it's quite revealing depending on what the answer is. What's yours?
Well, nostalgically, The Next Generation is my favorite one.
Hmm. That's what brought a lot of people to the table in our age. I'm 39 almost.
Yeah,
That's generally our age bracket's what brought a lot of people to the table because it was right around when we were kids growing up. I'm in Nova Scotia, Canada. I didn't have cable growing up in the area I lived in. I had TV, but it was just pretty bare bones basic stuff. So I missed
right.
Next Generation, but I did come to with Deep Space Nine, which
Yeah.
was my absolute and still is my favorite. Like I went
See,
back
and
and
it's such a weird one too.
I
It's
know
not. It's the only one where they're not on a ship somewhere trying to get somewhere else or on a mission.
exactly.
They're.
Yeah.
It's like It's like diplomacy and like negotiations and democracy and stuff.
And it was the first one to really, I guess, like Gene Roddenberry was very specific about not wanting them to be at war, like as specifically
Yeah.
at so it was the only one that really took place, like with the end of season 2 started a war, and then the whole rest of the show was going through the war. And,
Right.
like, I don't know, to me as a kid, I guess I didn't have the others to compare. But even now, rewatching it, like the in the pale moonlight and episodes like that are just so like adult. You know what I mean? Like they're just so
Right.
rough. And I love shows. I mean, as a producer and someone that's involved with television, I really love stuff that doesn't give you an easy answer. Like I hate when
Right.
everything gets wrapped up in a neat little package. Like when I watched the Hunger Games movie, I was so upset that they kind of wussed out and made it so that both of them lived instead of someone like I
Right.
said.
Right.
Said if I wrote this movie, someone she would have killed them, or she would have taken the berries or
Yeah.
did something else. You know what I mean? Like I know it's a book,
Absolutely.
but I
Yeah.
hate when they wuss out and give us the easy answer. And I just love when shows don't go that route. And you watch someone, it's more interesting to watch someone you relate to make decisions that you might not necessarily think are right, but you agree with
Right.
because in the situation at hand, right? So you're gonna go with Next Generation? That's yours?
I don't know. I mean, nostalgically, yeah, but
Mhm.
like the ones on Paramount are really good. Have you watched any of the new ones?
I'm a little behind on I'm very behind on Discovery. I think
Discovery.
I watched the second season and then they went to the future and that's where I left it. But I'm going to go back. I plan on. But I've been watching Lower Decks. I watched all that. I really
Lower
dig that
Decks
shit. Yeah,
is a lot of fun.
it's
That's
a
a lot of
really
fun.
fun show.
Picard is a weird one.
Oh, I
Picard is like
watched
a
the
really
first
weird
season
one.
of that, but I didn't watch the second.
So the first season's really weird, and the
Hmm.
second season is a little less weird. The third season, all the third season is a new final season of the Next Generation.
That's what I heard. I heard
It's
it's
literally
just
like it's like the showrunner, whose name I can't, Terry something, Metalis, Terry Metalis. I can't remember his name. I think it's Terry Metalis. He was a huge fan of the Next Generation growing up, and he felt like there were a ton of these like dangling storylines that were never wrapped up. And so, if you watch the third, you could watch all the Next Generation and then just jump to the third season of Picard, and it's a totally satisfying like wrapping up of all, like they were like ensign characters who disappeared one or two seasons
yeah.
into the Next Generation, and they have like a little moment
Oh,
in
nice.
Picard where they kind
Did,
of all wrap it up. And
did
so
he do
it's
the
really
full
cool.
show, that guy, or did he only come on in the last season?
I don't think he ran the first season. He might have done two. He definitely did three.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know two is
Okay.
basically like the reunion tour.
Yeah.
I often
Strange New Worlds is really good. Discovery is very good. Discovery is very like the first season. I remember watching it and thinking like it's the first one that's structured like a real. It was the first time there was a Star Trek series that didn't end with a neat. Every episode ended with like a neat little bow.
Mhm.
Like they were very like it was everything ended with that look forward to the next part of the story. It was an actual season arc.
Yeah.
You
My
know, you
bit
didn't have that in the old shows.
My biggest unanswered Star Trek Star Trek question that I've always been annoyed me was never answered was who the mysterious figure from the future was in the first season of Enterprise. They never told us who that was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the guy that was running and pulling the strings of the Suliban, and I think it was supposed to be Archer eventually, but they never did it on the show.
Right.
So it would have made sense to have like a grizzled old Archer that's trying to change what he did in the past, which is a fun idea, but
Right.
kind of been done at the end of Voyager as well. But hey, no, that's really cool. So were you like, did you have your nerd community that like was also into the Star Trek and that sort of stuff when you were growing up?
I had one kid I went to grammar school with who was really into his thing was the X Files. So I got into the X Files with him. Other than that, not really. I had like I grew up in Brooklyn with a bunch of like dudes who like to play basketball and that kind of thing. So, I had a very like not nerd centric group of friends.
So like a secret life.
Yeah, that was like, and again, it was the thing I did with my mom. Like it wasn't, like I think people who get into comics when they're really young, if they have other friends who are into that kind of thing, it's cool. If they don't really talk about the comics. They don't they hide it. They like, it's like not the cool thing to do, at least back in the day. Now I don't think anybody cares anymore. So I don't think it's really a big deal.
I'm a little jealous of this generation. How it's like, back in my day, it's like to read a comic with superheroes was kind of like you kept that to yourself. Now, like all those characters are in multi-billion-dollar movies that are everybody wants to see and are
It always makes me wonder. Like I don't think we're nerds anymore. And
no,
I think like the things that we grew up loving are now those are the major those are like the mainstream media now. So
we kind of took over.
Yeah, and I don't have any idea. I have no idea like what it is that my kids are watching and into that's going to be like 30 years from now, when I'm in my 70s. What are the movies? Is it all going to be Fortnite and like I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fortnite, like interactive movies or something,
Well, what it probably will be, what it will be if our generation is any indicator, it'll be whatever the big movies are now for them as kids, it'll be the bring everyone back for the last season or like the 30 years later season. So it'll be like, I don't know, the Sweet Life and Zack and Cody, season, like darker final season when they're adults or like, what I mean, that's even a data reference by our modern terms, but like Wednesday reunion series or whatever, whatever they're watching now, it'll just be.
I mean, Wednesday itself is already a darker kind of more.
That's true.
Modern version of a 50-year-old story.
I'm sure there's something else. Like one of these anime shows that everybody loves or something. There'll definitely be some kind of Pokemon, like the Gritty reboot. I don't know. It'll be something like that. Yeah. What did your mom do?
She actually only just recently retired. She's public relations.
Wow.
She ran the not public relations. It was public affairs. So she ran public affairs for a hospital here in Brooklyn for
very cool.
30 years.
And was your dad around?
Yeah, dad's around. Dad, they split when I was a teenager. But dad works for a company that they manage all the advertising on buses and trains and like bus stops all around New York City. Wow. So actually, this is pretty cool. When I was a kid, dad would occasionally come home with a poster that's meant for like the side of a wall. That was like, I think I had when Freddy versus Jason came out.
Cool.
I had a vinyl stick-on wall like poster that ran. It was probably like 8 feet long, and I ran it around like 2 walls in my bedroom at home. And
that's awesome.
He had when the first Harry Potter movie came out. I had a bus stop sized. It was like I actually collect movie. I have a lot of old movie posters. Like
I love movie posters. I'm a graphic designer by trade.
Oh, nice.
So and I love movie posters, and I have so many books about them, so many alternative movie posters, so many classic movie posters. Like the art, I feel like the movie poster. Like I mean, I don't want to show off everything, but behind my desk I have an alternative Gremlins poster.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I have a poster of one of my favorite movies. Oh shoot, I might have unplugged my phone.
Where'd you go?
I think I unplugged my thing. 1 second. I probably pulled it too hard.
Your camera doesn't want the world to see.
It wasn't going to give it to you. It's a Brian De Palma movie I really like called The Phantom of the Paradise.
Oh, nice.
It's a poster for that film. And
see, I've got a lot of weird ones. I have like my wife is really into really old musicals.
Oh, really?
Some very like obvious ones. Like we have an original Mary Poppins poster. We have from like when it first came out in 1966, I think. We have, but then there's one. I don't know if you can even see it on the back wall over there. Can't really see it.
The
It's
Reddish
for
one?
seven brides for seven.
Oh
Days,
yes, yeah. That's
all the
awesome.
way in the back. Yeah, and this is my most recent box of comics that I have to ship out to people. Just arrived yesterday
Oh, fantastic.
from Comic Impressions.
Well, I love that. Like you kind of went into. I think my camera's coming back there. Sorry about that. I love that you
There you
kind of
are.
went into. Let's see if I can try this again without ruining it. Yeah, it's the Phantom of the Paradise.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan
Yeah,
of that
so
movie.
see, we have that. We have one for, and it's an old Billy Wilder movie, 1, 2, 3. It's
Mhm.
called.
Yep.
My mom. That's another one my wife loves. And then we would go to these. We would go to these. We go to a musical every year for our anniversary, and
Mhm.
so we always seem to be going to the musical during Broadway Cares Week, where they raise extra money for AIDS research and
Oh yeah.
support fighting
Awesome.
AIDS. And so what we get is every time we go, we get like it's like an 11 by 17, show poster signed by the whole cast. And then we frame it with our tickets for that show.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
we've got like 6 or 7 of those around the house for like original cast for a bunch of really good shows.
Yeah.
But then I have rolled up in the closet. These are all like originals from the 80s.
Yeah.
I have one for I have an ET.
Nice.
I have a hall. I have a labyrinth. I actually have framed in. It's up on the
Oh,
wall.
that's awesome.
It's a really good one.
I love
have
those old
one that-
one sheets too, like the really big ones. Those ones are really
well,
cool.
that's what they are. They're all
Oh.
41 by 29.
Oh, that's awesome.
The one back there is too. It's just really far away. in the
That's
dark, but
awesome. That's huge.
yeah, they're
That's-
41 inches by 29 inches, I think.
Man,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was. I guess I was trying to get to. I feel like the art of the movie poster is so far gone. Like it's one of the most, and I don't really get on my big soapbox or complain about most nerd stuff because I'm a fairly open-minded person when it comes to like nerd stuff and changes and whatever the studios do to make it accessible to everybody. But
Right.
I don't mind when they change something. But the loss of the movie poster is what bothers me the most. Like every movie poster is just some cool action, like just some posed, the big actor in a pose, like The Rock from a different angle. And it's like, man, there used to be so many cool, unique movie posters back in the day that were just
All those Drew
so.
Struzan painted ones in the 80s.
I
Like
know.
Indiana Jones and the Star Wars lines. Like you don't get anything like that anymore,
No.
unless they're doing an homage to those movies on purpose.
Yeah, they kind of did with.
I have Legends. You ever see Legends?
Oh yes, the Coppola movie, right?
Is that Coppola? No,
No, it's the other one.
Scott.
Ridley Scott. Sorry,
Ridley Scott.
Ridley
Who
Scott.
I think it's Tom. I think Tom Cruise. If you ask him about that, he'll actually leave the interview. He doesn't talk about that movie.
Really? Why does he? What's
There's
he
something weird
that?
about it.
Really?
I don't know. I don't remember. There's some weird thing about that movie with him. And then I have Flight of the Navigator. You remember Flight of
Nice.
the
I
Navigator?
sure do.
I have that one. And I have one Never Ending Story poster.
Nice.
That was my favorite movie as a kid.
Really? Yeah. Did you ever read the book?
No, but I did get the tattoo though.
Nice. The book has a very dark, I mean, it's already kind of a dark movie for kids, but the book has a very dark ending. The book, like the kid just, because he goes up to the attic to hide and then kind of like in the book and then sort of falls into the world. But in the book, he doesn't get out. He just dies. They find his body up there in the attic. He just like starved to death or something and just never came back. Yeah. It's a wildly different version of, I mean, the movie itself's already kind of sad, but
yeah.
I
It's
found
a
that
nice ending though. It's actually, I mean, the whole world disappears, but then he gets to recreate it.
Yes.
There's like sort of a forward-looking happiness to it.
Yeah, well, that's why I always find it funny that people are so upset by the horse scene when the horse is in the swamps. It's like by the end of it, he gets to bring him back. Everybody comes back. It's
gut wrenching. You don't know that when you're watching it.
That is true, though.
You're a little kid, though. I cried. I still cry, even though I know it's coming back.
Oh yeah. No, well, it's probably one of the first times as a kid around that age period you had to really deal with death in a serious way in a film. Although they were like a lot of those companies went pretty wild with their kids in quotes movies in the 80s, like 70s and 80s. There's some really wild like the movie. What is it? I was talking to someone about the Return to Oz. The Fruza Balk movie, like that is a dark, messed up, twisted movie.
That's a twisted movie. It really is.
Yeah, the wheelies and the Jack Pumpkinhead.
80s fantasy movies is my favorite like subgenre. So I love all those movies.
Princess Bride, all that stuff. So your
Princess Bride, Beastmaster.
Oh, dude, one of my favorite jokes ever is when HBO first came around. They used to say that HBO stood for "Hey, Beastmaster's on." because it was always on HBO all the time. Every time you turn it on, you just be watching Beastmaster.
Yeah.
No, that was a good
Mark
one.
Singer and Rip Torn, right? Rip Torn is like the priest character.
My actually most of my frame of reference for Beastmaster is that TV show they did like in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I watched that a lot when it was one of the things I got on my channel. And I was really like as a kid, I got what I could get, like movies and stuff. But the channels I had showed Hercules and Xena, and that was one of my big outlets because I really, really dug that show. And obviously Sam Raimi went on to do bigger and well, a lot of cool things, and then go back to those sort of worlds, well, sort of with Evil Dead and all that stuff. But
Right.
yeah, I love that your parents were kind of like tangentially involved in like stuff that like is kind of like, awareness for stuff and output like that, because being that you got into producing. Well, what led you to that? Like, is it just like what was school? Like, what did you take after you finished high school?
It was just kind of the thing I wanted to do. Like mom was, when mom was young, she was a writer and an actress, and she would write poetry, and
Oh wow.
and then I came along and ruined all that. And dad was an athlete. Dad was like a really big baseball player. He like tried out for the Mets at one point when he was 18 or 19 years old.
Wow.
He was really good. He was a really good pitcher. And so they were very different people. And like dad doesn't really have like a nerdy interest. So I didn't get it from him. It was mom. And then later when I was in high school and just trying to figure out, where do I want to go to college and what kind of direction do I want to go in? I thought for a while that I wanted to be a stand-up comedian.
That's something I always thought I wanted to do, but I've never tried to do.
I mean, I don't mind being, on stage. I don't mind being the center of attention. I don't have like stage fright or anything like that. I started to like, I got to know a bunch of people who are comics, and a lot of them just seem like really sad people. It seems like a tough thing. Like if you're really good at it, you're kind of in this weird famous for, making jokes. It's like, I don't know. Something about it. Like I'm a comic like nerd. Like I watch a ton. I watch a ton of stand up.
No, I don't think you're wrong. Like I listen to Mark Maron's podcast a lot, and it does feel like it feels like I never missed an episode, but it feels very, like the Pagliacci, like the sad clown, like it's the making everybody else laugh to hide the fact that you can't. Like there is something in that. I don't think it's everybody. It's certainly, but it does seem
no.
Like the best ones, like the best ones, definitely have some kind of messed up background.
My mom went to, I want to say it was college briefly with Richard Jeni. You know the comedian Richard Jeni?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
he was really big in like the late 90s. He was in The Mask with Jim Carrey.
Yeah, 100% remember him. Yeah, he was really funny. Yeah. He used to make fun. I remember him a lot from some of his stand up. I think he did like Just for Laughs in Canada. They used to rerun. We used to rerun his stuff all the time.
Yeah, he was great, and we used to see him every year. I would take my mother for her birthday every year. We'd go to see him.
That's fun.
So I really wanted to do that for a while, and then I think I decided I didn't want to be famous. I just I'd rather fly under the radar. So I started looking at stuff behind the camera and behind the behind the scenes and stuff. And so I figured the thing that I love the most is episodic television, sort of episodic storytelling. Mm-hmm. And that was what I wanted to do. And so when I was in high school, I just kind of got lucky. My guidance counselor knew someone who was a key grip on movie sets, and set me up with an internship, and I kind of went from there. I just kind of one job led to another, and then I started producing unscripted TV about 25 years ago now. 20 years ago. Yeah,
because producers never a job that I ever really hear anybody say this is like what I want to do specifically. And it's not like it's a very important job. 100%. Sure. Like I do act. I a lot of stage stuff, but I have been in some film stuff that whenever it films in Nova Scotia. A lot of Stephen King stuff films here. Yeah, like that show. Was it his new book, The Institute? They're filming that here now. Mm-hmm. But there's the show From that's on Paramount Plus that they film here too. Mm-hmm. And a few other things that I've been in, little things in here and there. But I'm really love that world, and producers one of those like sort of unsung heroes of it. They don't really get to talk to people that do it a lot. I guess it's not like usually it's like some big actor produces it as well when it gets to the huge movies. But like when it comes to the other stuff, how did you get inserted into like reality television or unscripted television first?
I just basically applied for a job. So like when I did that internship in college, all in high school, and then
Mhm.
all through college, every summer I went back and I worked on movie sets. So like very early on, I spent a summer as Milos Forman's assistant
Oh wow.
on Man on the Moon. So if you look at the credits for that movie, it's my first credit ever. I was
Wow. What was that
19 years old.
like? That must
That
have
was
been
awesome.
wild.
I was 19 when I did it. I'm credited as the post production assistant.
Wow.
And it was awesome. It was like he's very chill. He was very chill. He passed away a few years ago,
Yeah.
but he was very chill. I would get him coffee twice a day. I would help his wife pack for vacations. And otherwise I sat in the back of an edit bay and watched this guy with 2 Oscars make a movie. And I was like, if people would ask me later, like, are you going to go to film school? And I was like, I just did. I just went to film school.
I don't like, and believe me, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would argue with me, but there's so many people, like some of the best just never went that route. It's kind of like get into something and see you can watch, like I'm a huge Criterion fan. You can watch like all the special features on a Criterion disc, and that's like a film school. Like, you can learn so much from some of these stuff.
I will say it's like I think the main benefit of going to somewhere like that is to be around everyone else who wants to do that for a living.
Yeah.
It's connections. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's like the main benefit to going to like a place like Harvard is like, those are all people who are going to go on to start businesses, make a lot of money, and you'll be connected to them. You'll know them. Those are your friends.
Yeah.
So
Fair
that's
enough.
the main benefit to it. And so, but I didn't end up doing that. I didn't go to film school. I did all those movie jobs in college. And then I applied through Craigslist. This is 22 years ago.
A positive Craigslist story? This is the first.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? My first job out of college actually was I was a production assistant at Fox News.
Oh God, that was that.
And it was super weird, but kind of like an interesting. There's a guy on TV now, Jesse Waters. He's on Fox. He hosts The Five, and he has another show. Like,
I mean, full
Friday
disclosure,
nights.
I'm not a big Fox News watcher. But,
me neither.
But I do know him
from. We were production assistants together. Yeah.
Oh, that guy. Yeah, 100%. He's one of the people that like John Oliver makes fun of a lot, and the Daily Show does quite a bit.
Yeah, he was on. He got started as a PA there, and then he ended up working for Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly, I think, thought he was funny and would put him out in the field to do kind of like ambush interviews and man on the street stuff. But I don't think even Bill O'Reilly was like, "You're going to be the head of the network one day. You're going to be like the face of the network one day."
So Bill O'Reilly probably didn't expect him to get booted out of the network eventually.
That's true too.
Yeah.
But so I did that, and then after that job came to an end, I was working on like a news magazine show there, and then they offered me they were like, you could move to the newsroom if you want to, and I was like, I'm good. And so
did you find it like the personalities? Like I fully believe, and you don't have to comment. I don't want you to get anyone in trouble, but that
no, I'm fine commenting.
Oh, okay, fine. I mean, I don't know where your political world, your spectrum is. You don't have to get into that. But I truly believe that most of the people on that don't believe half of the shit that they, the talking points they have to spout, because it's the agenda of the network, right? So
I'll say this though. So behind the scenes there, when I was there, this is 22 years ago, so it wasn't quite what it is now, right?
Yeah.
22 years ago, Hannity was still on a show with Combs, who was a liberal.
Right.
Like, and it was a debate program.
Right.
Like,
yeah. They had that one.
It wasn't just wall to wall, like, Glenn Beck, Hannity. Like, Glenn Beck has been on for years, but you get what I'm saying. It was different. It was slightly different program.
Less of an echo chamber at that time. Yeah.
Behind the scenes, there were a lot of people who were very liberal working there.
Yeah.
Like, I worked on a news magazine show that used talent from the news channel to make a program that was on the broadcast channel. So Fox 5 had like a news show that was called The Pulse, and it was sort of like, Dateline. It was that kind of a thing, but Fox had it. This was Fox's version of Dateline. And Shepard Smith was the host, and Bill O'Reilly had like a 1-minute segment. He was like the show's Andy Rooney,
Shep Smith was like the one guy that I kind of liked on there. He seemed fairly left leaning too, because didn't he go to the liberal, like to some other program that was on a left leaning?
He had to leave. I don't know politically where he is, because he's an old school news person in this way. He clammed up about it.
I think he said something that was like he said something, or he wouldn't do something that wasn't towing the line for and that's what got him canned.
There was a while. I think the opinion people and the news people started not getting along, and he was kind of collateral damage.
Yeah, I liked when those were separate people. Well, that was a good time.
But the people who were running the show I worked on, one guy came directly from the Daily Show
Oh, nice.
to work on this like actual news program, but
Yeah.
at Fox News. One guy, this dude, who I've still talked to every once in a while, his name's Keith. He was, I think he's a pretty big liberal. I think he's a left-leaning person. He writes, he co-writes autobiographies with professional wrestlers, and he's done a couple of true crime novels. And he was a producer on the show.
Oh, really?
Like the people behind the scenes were not all right-leaning, but the network,
Yeah, of course.
well,
Well, it's your
opinion of
job.
the network is, yeah.
That movie they did, the one about Bombshell, the one about the whole Roger Ailes thing. That was like kind of, when you see the characters that are like, like lesbians or other people that work there that are just like keeping their head down because they just do the job, right? And you're like, I feel like that's probably really
I'll say this
depiction.
too. I'll say this about the place. Like, of all the places I've worked where, and I did a lot of reality TV after I left that. And reality TV, it's generally gig work. You come on board for a short period and then you leave. When I was at Fox News, everyone there was on staff. Everyone there, they were paying, from what I understood, better rates than all the other news channels were, to even like production assistants.
Yeah, awesome.
And we all had like healthcare and things
Yeah,
like that.
of course, you're not going to want to leave
company, right? And almost every company I've worked for since then has like this made up thing called permalance, where you work there but you don't really work there. And in the States, that means you don't get healthcare, you don't get benefits, you don't have all those things. In Canada, you don't have to worry about as much about that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned the person writing the wrestling biographies, because we were talking about earlier, one of my many jobs is I'm a professional wrestler.
I think I actually was looking at that earlier today.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering if you were the same Andre Mayette. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, it's So, and in the like John Oliver and quite a few other sort of journalistic endeavors have done sort of things about the WWE and how the wrestlers there are contracted employee workers. They can't work anywhere else, but they're technically not employees, and therefore they're paid their wages, but they're not entitled to benefits or healthcare or any of that stuff. Right. Which is nuts in an industry like that. Yeah. But yeah. Crazy. So you transitioned from there into reality television.
Yeah, I just got a job. After I left Fox, I needed a gig, and I answered 2 Craigslist ads. One of them was a driver on a show called The Cut, which was like sort of a knockoff of The Apprentice way back. It was with Tommy Hilfiger was the Donald Trump of it. I don't know, people don't remember this. The Apprentice was supposed to be one season with Trump and then a different billionaire, eccentric, crazy person every season. And everyone just fell in love with, you're fired. So he became the guy for the whole thing. So all these other people, they were lining up: Richard Branson, Mark Cuban,
Schwarzenegger eventually.
They all had shows that were just knockoffs of The Apprentice, because they were all supposed to eventually host. Like the plan was to cycle them in. Richard Branson, I think, was that they were talking to him for like a season 4 or something like that.
Well,
so
apparently the only reason
The Cut.
I was going to say, apparently the only reason, like he ran for president in the first place was to leverage a better contract to keep doing that show. So that, and like the look on his face when he won was almost like, I didn't want this, before I think he realized how much of a demagogue he could become. And now it's just the world. But yeah. Okay. So The Cut.
Crazy. The Cut. And then, so I did that. And then that led to a bunch of different, like I made friends with the locations department. I started working in film and television unscripted shows as a locations manager. And then I answered another Craigslist ad that was, I was an executive assistant, and then I became an associate producer. I became a producer and director of a show called Into Character MC, and this an unscripted show. So I basically I spent half my years doing locations work in New York. The other half I would be in LA reality shows. And then at some point, just had to make a decision. I think I was making a fraction money doing reality TV, so that's what I did. And then I am.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
So I guess that world is an interesting one. It's not one I'm super deep into. I did watch Comic Book Men all the way through. Yep. So that must have been an interesting one to work on. I was hoping, I talked to Ming Chen one time about having him on the show, but it hasn't panned out yet, but hopefully we'll get him on someday. But I mean, what was that experience like? Like to kind of, because you're kind of marrying, you said you kind of found comics through it. So, I mean, nerds, to use the term, the colloquialism of it, are interesting characters, especially the ones that would frequent a shop like that. So it's kind of like you got a built-in sort of cast of strange characters that you can kind of center on and focus around. And that one had other elements that kind of combine the like where you would appraise books and those sort of things as well. So it was a really cool show, especially if you were a nerd. It was like, it just would blast nostalgia straight into your brain, which is kind of like what most things do nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a good time making it. I mean, I think at the time AMC was still doing, Mad Men, and they were still doing like edgy, different TV, and so they wanted a show that was like, I think the original idea was just they wanted Pawn Stars in a comic book shop, and we producing it convinced them like, you guys are the Mad Men channel, like you can't just do Pawn Stars, so you can't just like take another, you know what I mean? Like, let's do something a little different. Like everyone's doing that now. Let's do something a little different. So, we kind of like the development team at the production company, they all came up with this idea for the podcast to be kind of like a thread in the show. It was the original tape for the no one's seen. I don't think it's public. Had Kevin and all the guys in the shop doing the podcast. It was shot black and white to like as an homage to Clerks.
Oh, that's pretty cool, actually. That's neat.
Yep. And then it would be that the other part of the show was Pawn Stars. So they would do sit down interviews with the cast talking about these items. I got to get my hands on this thing. And then they would do stand up interviews outside with the people coming in to sell comics. And so when we got to do the series, we convinced them, let's just eliminate all the interviews. Kevin is only really present in the podcast. So that's the interview. The whole show is the guys are telling Kevin what happened in his comic book shop while he was away all week.
Yeah.
And so, that just became kind of the format. And so we got to mess around. So the scene work had to carry a lot of the storytelling, but then you could just cut back and forth to Kevin and the guys like arguing about, like who is the best Catwoman and what's the appropriate thing to do if you found a pile of Superman's poop somewhere, things like random, totally insane things. But, and just hanging out in a comic book shop all day, I started reading the books, and so the show was for AMC. We had a lot of rules about what comics could be visible in the background.
Yeah, I was curious about that. Like, what was the rules on those? Because like they would show quite a bit of stuff, and obviously people brought in a lot of old DC stuff and whatever, and they would have occasionally a celebrity wander through looking for some comic related to something they're in,
right?
Which I always thought was pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, the not to blow the cover, but the celebrities they were booked.
I was 100%. You could 100% tell that. Yeah,
no, of course.
I don't know if I wanted to just like. I mean, it's obvious when you watch it that they do. They're like, well, I played this character, so I'm here to find this particular comic that you just happen to have behind the counter.
Right. Yeah. So, but the rule, just to to answer the question, the rule about what you could and couldn't show, it's different. If somebody walks in to sell something, we can show whatever we want. Because that's what they do. That's business. We're there. We're talking about the item. It's fair use. Like the legal argument is it's fair use. You can use it if you want, and you can talk about it. You can show it as long as people are talking about it. It's considered commentary. What's on the walls and what the characters are wearing is considered like set dressing and wardrobe. That's a decision we make as producers.
Yeah.
So you can't just put Batman on the wall. You can't just have like a major character up on the wall. And for the first season, I don't think that, except for the books that Kevin actually wrote for DC, I think we were pretty limited about what we could do. Later, Marvel and DC, or at least DC, opened up a little bit and they could put more. But for the first season, we had to deal with The Walking Dead because it was AMC.
Right.
And so The Walking Dead was everywhere in the shop.
Yeah.
And so that was my first comic book really to read, like at the, an issue by issue book. Was The Walking Dead because it was there and I just started reading it.
Did you have a fondness for like zombie films or like that sort of genre before?
No, not really.
Yeah.
No. I really enjoyed what I liked about that book mostly is that it felt like it could really go on forever.
Yeah. It did pretty much. It's 200 and something issues is pretty solid.
Yeah.
And I mean the show went on for a million years. Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting to me about I mean, I know Disney, or specifically since Marvel's under Disney's banner now, is fairly litigious, but the idea that like it's kind of free advertising, right? Like, why? How's it hurting anything? Unless you're saying this company
Well, that's what
sucks
it
or
is.
something, right? Yeah, no, specifically.
That's why the
Um,
rules. That's why, and then lawyers just don't want you to talk about it. So like the
yeah,
lawyers will tell the companies don't even get into it. But
yeah,
if you're just saying something positive, if you're talking about the nostalgia of a book, of a toy, a moment in time, and it's all, and that's what the show was really about. It was
yeah.
Kevin and his friends like talking nostalgically about things they remembered from when they were kids.
So did you like kind of make a somewhat of a relationship out with Kevin because you did some more work for him later on, right?
Yeah, we did. So we did that show. I did the first season of Comic Book Men. I was in the field and in post on that, and then years later, kind of unrelated by coincidence, I was at a company called Matador, and we did a show called Geeking Out. That Kevin actually came to after me.
Oh, okay.
It was originally Greg Grunberg and somebody else,
Oh,
whose name I
cool.
can't remember now. And then
The guy from
AMC wanted to
Heroes.
do it. No, that's funny. Yeah, yeah, Greg.
Yeah,
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 yes,
yeah,
Greg.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So he grew up with J.J. Abrams, and so
Yeah,
he's very
he
good,
always
very close
appears in
friends.
a lot of
Yeah,
Abrams stuff. He's always somewhere in the background or doing something.
and I think he grew up. I think they both grew up like in the L.A. area, so he just grew up there and knows everybody.
Cool.
So he was, and he's like friendly with all these guys, and he's like really knowledgeable about how the business works out there. And Kevin is just a huge geek who's knowledgeable about all that geeky stuff. And so between the two of them, we did interviews with. My favorite actually was we interviewed Rhett Reese and I'm gonna blank on his other name. The two writers for the Deadpool movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they came
Uh,
in. They were hilarious.
oh God.
Um,
Yeah, I know.
they do everything together. It was Rhett Reese and
Paul Wernick.
it's Paul Wernick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, right.
It's funny. The other day, I remembered Paul's name and not Red's name.
They did Zombieland as well, which is something
They
that I
did the
remember. Yeah,
Zombieland
yeah,
movies,
yeah, yeah.
but they after the first Deadpool movie, they came in and told us all about, and they actually announced on our show that Zombieland 2 was happening.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah, they were very cool. We had Nathan Fillion and Alan Tudyk on. We interviewed J.J. Abrams. We went to the premiere of the third J.J. universe Star Trek movie.
Oh, nice.
Big
Beyond.
red carpet thing and all that.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
that
cool.
was really cool.
That's super sweet. Do you find like getting to know some of these people on a more personal level, like, are you surprised more often than not that they're just casually cool people, or is it like, there's like a
I mean,
Hollywood
some of them
sheen
are.
that's still there?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are. Kevin, for example, is really unassuming, very approachable.
He
Just kind of
seems
a
that way,
chill.
but yeah,
Yeah, even more so now. Like I saw him more recently, and he's even more like. I think he like created this character for himself that the way he puts it is like it's a guy I made up, and that's his public persona.
Mhm.
And over time, they've kind of become the same guy, and so he's just kind of chill and
yeah.
you know
He
he's
seems
great.
he seems like the kind of guy that gets you. You meet people that get you excited about doing stuff. Like about
Yeah,
anything creatively when they're just so excited and passionate about what they're doing that it almost infects you into want to do
yeah.
creative stuff. He seems like one of those types. Just to watch him and gives that
I
vibe.
think I think I heard him tell this story once. There was something like he went to like one of the like seminar many years ago. Some
Hmm.
like believe in yourself, you can do anything you take
Yeah,
your mind
right.
to kind of thing.
Yeah,
And it really like struck a chord with him. And so he talks all the time now about like everything he's done to make himself famous and get big. Like that there's nothing stop. He's like, if I can do it, like anyone can do it. He means that when he says it. Like people say that and it's like a kind of a false bullshit humble thing. But he's legitimately saying that. Like if you he said this on Comic Book Man about the cell phone. He's like, you could with your cell phone now, you can do everything that I did to make Clerks, but on your phone.
yeah,
You can film it here, you can edit it here, you can publish it right from here directly to the internet.
yeah,
So if you want to go out and be a filmmaker, there's literally nothing stopping you if you own a phone. Like go
yeah.
and do it. He's very kind of get out there and do it and make something. And maybe no
It's
one likes it, but if you keep doing it, you'll find enough people that like what you do that you can make a world of your own out of it. You can make a
He's
living.
like probably the most successful version of that type of person. There's a few of
Yeah,
those guys out there. I mean, Corman was kind of one of those guys, but he's still very much an old studio system kind of guy.
right.
Like Lloyd Kaufman's one of those guys, but I mean, obviously the trauma stuff is kind of its own sort of world. I wouldn't call it like the highest thing out there, but it's a lot of fun, and that's
Yeah,
those guys seem to be like I always say I have a real affinity for like the Ed Woods of the world, like the people that are really passionate about making something but not good at it. The Tommy Wiseau's, the whatever, like they really just want to make it, but they're terrible, whatever. But they're just so passionate about it, kind of like you feel for them. It's like the underdog. You want to see them make it. But they're like the success stories, or the people that the underdog that made it. I mean, Kevin Smith's stuff always has such heart that just sort of
Yeah.
bleeds through whenever he does. And I
And
think,
there's a ton of guys, there's a ton of people doing like indie comic stuff right now that like
Mm.
if you, because of the way the internet works and like the kind of broken direct to market,
Mhm.
system that we all like are laboring under and still trying to
Mhm.
figure out how it's going to work 2 months from now.
Mhm.
Um, you can, if you have an idea and you can kind of package it in a way that it shows off what's not cool about it, and you can find 100 people, just 100 people on the internet that are interested in giving you $5 for that idea.
Mhm.
You can make your own comic book on and sell it on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. If you can get enough people, if you do it consistently, and you can build it into a Patreon or some kind of
Yeah,
like an ongoing thing where you can make a living at it.
that's a great
Um,
point. And that's like
yeah,
honestly, and just like the Kevin Smith, like pick up your phone and make your movie. Like anybody, like with my tablets there, you can draw you can do it all digitally now, pretty much, and you can get it out there. And I mean with the Kickstarters, it seems like almost everyone I talk to, like on the show or just in life, I have a lot of friends that do comics. I used to do a few back in the day. I'd like to get back to, but I haven't yet. Um, it seems like all their Kickstarters make it. So there's an audience out there, a lot of people that are like interested in unique, different stuff and
yeah,
want to feel like part of something new.
yeah. And not everybody does a Kickstarter and makes like $50,000, but
No, but
you
like
know,
if your ask is reasonable.
yeah,
Uh,
totally. I mean, there's a guy named JD Calderon. Do you know JD?
no.
He does a show every Sunday. He has on like 5 or 6 people in the panel. They talk about comics.
Oh,
He's been
cool.
doing this for a lot of years. And I think he had a whole career before he started doing this. And
Nice.
then he's on Kickstarter like every 2 months with this whole world, the Oswald Chronicles he does. He's done like 25 issues. It's like a little mouse. It looks a little
Yeah.
bit like Five Goes West,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I do
that
know
kind of
this. I
thing.
do know this. I
Yeah.
100% know this. Kind of reminds me of Crazy
He
Cat. It's kind of got that sort of
yeah.
vibe to it. Yeah.
So he's not out there pushing it too hard. He's not out there like trying to make it huge. He has a Kickstarter every 2 months. He raises like $500, and he has so many followers and so many people interested in what he does. But he's not trying to like he's just trying to pay to make the books, so that at some point, I think the plan is that he has this library of books about this whole universe that he can go to a big publisher
Yeah.
and say, buy this from me and put it or let's make it into a cartoon. It's a whole universe.
Scholastic or something, like here,
Yeah,
like what they
exactly.
did
I
with
think that's the
Bone
long term
eventually.
plan.
Yeah. Well, when
But
did
then there are other
you?
people who like will raise 100. They'll put Cthulhu on the cover of their book and raise like $50,000.
That's a good
And
angle. I should
God,
throw Cthulhu on there.
that's what it is.
Pick the thing in public domain, right? Like just and
That's a
then
big one.
combine the two. Just make Sherlock Holmes versus
Well,
Cthulhu, and then you'll make 1,000, a million.
it's like the thing is like there's something like it's a running joke among Kickstarter creators, but like do you know Pat Chan? Do you know the name Pat Chan?
Yes. What do
So
I
he
know
does a
about?
bunch of comics on Kickstarter.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
He still writes he does a lot of work for hire stuff, but he still writes for Zenoscope
Yep.
and I did a lot of writing for them. I think he did Robin Hood for a long time, for a long
Yes.
run.
Yeah. 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 I do 100% know who that is.
Yeah. So
Yep.
he does a lot of Kickstarter stuff. He has actually three different brands on Kickstarter. He has one live every minute, like sometimes
Crazy.
two at a time.
Jeez.
And he raises a lot of money. He makes a lot of money on Kickstarter, and then he does conventions. He does a lot of like erotica conventions in addition to like just comic conventions and stuff. And but he's prolific in like building his audience. He found a niche. People like the thing that he does, and he kept building on it.
Mhm.
And so he is probably making a decent living just on the Kickstarter side of it,
Yeah.
But it's all different goals. Like you can do that, or you can just get pay to print your books, and treat it like a hobby. One day, turn it around to something cool.
Yeah. Well, how did you come to it? Like, when did you decide to start making your own comic?
So just a few years ago, during the pandemic, my friends who were all the crew and production team on Comic Book Men. A couple of years after I left, I did one season of Comic Book Men, and then I just was unavailable. I was on another show for a
Mhm.
while, and So they started a comic book company. They had all these ideas, like I do, like everyone does, where they were, they wanted to like write a movie and get someone to give them $200 million to make a space time travel epic. And no one was going to do that, so they turned it into a comic book. They turned a couple of ideas into comic book series called Blue Juice Comics. They do a book called The Accelerators, which is great, and Anne Bonny, and they do a book with they've done a couple projects now with Walt Flanagan from Comic Book Men, War of the Undead, and Knights of the Fifth Dimension, and they do a book with Justin Gray, who used to write at DC years ago, and it's called Billy the Kid. That was a Kickstarter book that they actually bought. They actually published it off of
if you talk to Walt Flanagan, tell him I want to see a sequel to Cryptozoological Man.
Oh, I have a signed copy of that.
I like that series. That was really cool.
Yeah, he had a lot of fun doing that. They did that for the show, I think. But so they've been running this company for years, and then I think like I would go to New York Comic Con and see them there and hang out and stuff. But then right after the pandemic, I got really interested in what they were doing, and I just spent a few months with them, just learning how the whole system worked, and so they've been putting books in stores in addition to going to conventions and stuff. And then I was learning about crowdfunding, and so we took one of their books that already, Billy the Kid was already a Kickstarter entity. It was known among the Kickstarter comics people. They picked up that series and they started a new arc of it, and I got them to do the first issue on Kickstarter. So I ran that Kickstarter. That was my first foray into it. And then I did one of my own called Cicada Samurai. And then I've been kind of bouncing back and forth between projects that I'm writing for myself, and then one that's live right now, which is Scott Snyder Presents The Cloakroom, which is an anthology series of all these creators who are in Scott Snyder's Substack, writing workshop class. And so they pitch us ideas, and we publish them as an anthology series. Really? That's a really cool idea. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It was actually, so 3 years ago, a group of students in the class did one volume of it, but they did a big book. I actually have them here. They did one. This was volume one. Here's volume one, Tales from the Cloakroom. That's cool. And it's like 20 stories, so it's a trade paperback size. Yeah, that's great. But lots of cool art inside, and all different kinds of stories, and different writers telling different kinds of stories. Every one of them has a totally different feel, and that's awesome. Moral. It actually was an Eisner nominated story in this one, in the first volume. What's Snyder's connection? Does he vet them, or is it just his name's on it? So Scott runs a writing workshop class through his Substack. And so if you're a subscriber to his Substack, once a month roughly, he does a show where he just talks about some topic. He talks about how to break down a story, how to write a mystery, how to write a superhero comic. He's done something like 25 of these classes now. Sometimes he'll have on other writers. He had Josh Williamson on one. He had the editor Will Dennis on. Wow. He's had a bunch of people on. So he'll do that, and then there's another tier where if you're in the class, if you're writing your own story, you can get he called it office hours, where you can book a 10-minute meeting with him, send him your script, he'll read it, and then he'll give you notes. So you'll have a meeting, and he'll talk you through it and kind of help you, help you with any problems you're having with the story. So for a lot of the stories that are in these books that we're publishing, he was a sort of a story consultant in that way, where he was kind of guiding the person. Or a lot of times the stories were written because of something he said or did in class. So he had a mystery class where he described, for example, a really easy way to set up a mystery is you've got two characters who are up to something and a third character who's trying to figure it out. And that's it. Very basic setup. Yeah. One of the students in the class went home that night and wrote a story based on that concept, just played with it. And we published it in the second issue of The Cloakroom, which is out. That's what's on Kickstarter right now. Awesome. Very cool. So he's involved, and then he is very supportive of it. He always retweets us. He mentions us in his newsletter. Awesome. Seems very happy to have it as sort of like a tangential offshoot thing for his class. That's kind of super. Well, it just helps promote that, right? Totally, and it's like a self-actualizing thing where he built like this little community of up and coming people who all are interested in working in comics. And so we all have this little network now we get to bounce around in. It's very cool.
That is super cool. Yeah, I've always liked him as a writer. His stuff, I mean, not just like his mainstream stuff, but he had a book years ago called Severed.
Oh yeah.
Which is one of my favorite like horror comic reads. Another one that not a lot of people have probably heard of, but I highly suggest it. It's very good. And like, yeah, it was just it's one of every once in a while you read a comic and you're like, man, why isn't this a movie or a TV series? And I read that one. I was like, this would be a perfect series or movie to pick up that story and do the sort of weird ghoul creature in the Depression era thing that this kid gets wrapped up with. It's just such a cool idea. And
he did his book The Witches is an Amazon animated series. I think it's Amazon animated series now. He's
really?
the showrunner. He's like the head writer for this.
Oh, I didn't know that. Shit, I'll have to watch that. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
So is that what you got going on now? Is the Kickstarter for that?
I have the Kickstarter for that going on right now. I'm getting ready to launch. I did a short called Cicada Samurai, which was my own thing. I'm doing the first full issue of that.
So I'm a little curious for this. I'm actually not familiar with it, but I'm definitely going to go look it up.
Okay.
So why cicadas?
So again, this is all because of the pandemic. During in 2021, there was a really big emergence of cicadas. I got nerdy and I got obsessed about it. And I started reading about them, and they're amazing. They are, they live for 17 years underground, and then they come out and they don't even live long enough to learn how to fly well. So they're just these big dumb flies, and they don't hurt anything. They don't bother anyone. They make a lot of noise and they fly into shit. And they're just big, dumb, defenseless things. And all these animals and other insects eat millions of them. Just millions of them. But there are so many of them that some of them live long enough to basically they get 2-3 weeks above ground, they mate and they drop dead, and that's it. So during the high anxiety of the pandemic and everything, I'm a parent. I have 3 kids. My wife and I have 3 kids, and I was thinking like just keeping my 3 kids alive as younger kids is like an anxiety-ridden nightmare, right?
Oh yeah, I imagine.
So I was thinking like with the cicadas, I was like, imagine if one of them had some life experience, wasn't just a 17-year-old, right? One of them, so it started growing into this thing where I was like, there's one immortal samurai, magically samurai, empowered cicada who's immortal, has been around for 6 generations, and his job is every 17 years he protects as many cicadas as he can so that they can all mate and maintain the species. Otherwise, the species will die out. So he's protecting them from these monsters and these things. And when you read it, it sounds like a disgruntled parent. Like the narration, the character is like a dad who he has a million kids who are all 17 years old, and they're all going to prom night at the same time to make horrible decisions, and he has to go out and keep them alive and fight foxes and these bird dragon looking things. And like there's this one other insect called the cicada killing hornet, which is it's the size, it's like bigger than a cicada. It's like a 2.5-inch wasp thing. And what it does is it'll catch a cicada in mid-flight, paralyze it with a stinger, not kill it, paralyze it, and then drag it back to its burrow and lay an egg in a chamber and seal the chamber. And then the eggs hatch and they eat this thing alive. They eat a cicada alive for days. And I was like, that is an amazing comic book villain monster thing. And so the Cicada Samurai is mainly protecting all these kids from this bloodthirsty hornet that just wants to kill and eat them and feed them to her babies.
This is awesome. I'm a big proponent of anything different. Like anything, like I do theater and I'm always like pushing for like the theater group that I'm a part of to do something different. I'm always like, just give me like different. I just like, this is so fun. That's a great idea. That's a blast.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to write. And it's like, there's that thing people always say about write what you know. I don't like, I think I kind of modified it the way I think about it. And I don't know who said that. I feel like this is something I must have heard somewhere, but I don't think it's right what you know. I think it's like right what you feel. And so, again, I don't know anything about, I read a lot about samurai, like culture, samurai stories. I did a ton of research. I read so much and listened to a bunch of podcasts for many, many hours about cicadas. just to kind of figure out what elements from their
Oh,
actual
cool.
biological like lifespan can I put into the story and make it make sense and make it cool, like little Easter eggs for people who are into that.
The cicada
but
enthusiasts.
but it all exactly it all just came from like an obsession with these bugs coupled with my anxiety as a dad and turning that into what's the thing I fear the most. Something out there is trying to kill my kids. And so that's it. An immortal cicada fighting the thing that's out there trying to kill his kids.
They have 17 million of them.
That's it.
That's a really cool idea.
What a gut wrenching, right? Imagine you had a billion kids who are all 17 at one time.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love that they're all, because like nobody is their best self at 17. Like just the idea that they're all like, everyone thinks they're immortal. They're just stupidly getting themselves killed all the time because they're driving too fast or getting drunk and driving, or
I've got
amazing.
a copy. I'll send you a copy. I have a copy of this is I did 4 covers for Cicada Samurai. So I got really lucky. There's an anime and manga and just comic book artist now named Takashi Okazaki. And so he did Afro Samurai back in the day.
Oh,
so
wow.
like
that was great.
Cult hit.
Yeah.
I like reached out to him on Instagram. There's no reason he has to respond to anybody on Instagram. He doesn't speak English. We were communicating through Google Translate.
Nice.
I sent him a message on Instagram and I was like, I have this idea about a Cicada Samurai. Have you any interest in hearing me out? And he was like, totally. So he did my original character designs.
They're very cool looking, I have to say.
Yeah. And then an artist named Mary Landro, who's awesome. She's a fellow Canadian. She's the series artist and she did the main covers. But the cover I have in my hand, this is Walt Flanagan from Comic Book Men did this.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you can kind of see the cryptozoology, how you were saying cryptozoic man and all that.
Yeah.
So his version of Cicada Samurai is this grizzled, battle-hardened samurai, and he's got all these like dismembered animal monster things that he's killing all around him.
I love because like the general exoskeleton of the cicada just makes for such a cool looking little armor. Like it's super neat. That's a very cool idea.
That's Takashi's original design.
That's awesome. I literally was just looking at a picture of that. I think it's from your Kickstarter, actually. Yeah, for number 0.
Yeah,
and then
awesome. But you were saying about being like brutal. Like people make bad decisions, and I had a lot of fun doing this because I just was like, how can I? Every time you turn the page, how can I just make it seem like every bad decision they make actually leads to these awful. This is a very kind of anime looking thing,
and they're just getting wiped out.
That's it.
Awesome.
These two little teenagers decide to sneak out, before they're supposed to, and a raven rips one in half.
This actually kind of reminds me of. Are you familiar with Troy Little? Any chance? He's on the show before. He's an artist. He lives in Prince Edward Island, and but he worked on Rick and Morty comics for a long time doing the art. He did like the Dungeon Dragons Rick and Morty comics.
Yep,
and the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas graphic novel and a bunch of other stuff. Him and his wife both do comics. And they have their own little imprint. They do some really cool stuff. But when I was hanging out with some mutual friends, well, he is a friend, but we were hanging at another friend's house last weekend when I was in PEI. And he told me about this book. This reminds me a lot about it. It's from John and Quarterly in Quebec, and it's called it's a French comic, but I think they distributed it. It's called Beautiful Darkness. And it's about little nymphs or like woodland creatures that live inside the corpse of a little girl in the woods. And then they kind of branch out and start going around, but then they start getting killed by like birds and the other things and it's brutal, but it's really chintzy and cute. And then it gets real dark real fast. And I bought the book on his recommendation, and I've been flipping. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but just glancing at it as this really like cutesy approach to some really dark subject matter, and it's really interesting. Which is cool. It sounds right up the alley of this book, which is awesome. I love, but yours has, I think, more of an adventure spin to it, which is really cool.
It's definitely more of like an action. It's basically a superhero story.
And very Lone Wolf and Cub, which I'm a big fan of too. Like if Lone Wolf and Cub had a bunch of children.
Do you know Lenore, the cute little dead girl? You know that story?
Yeah. Yep.
So the way you were describing about the living and the dead girl, that made me think of that. Very like dark, twisted, but kind of like cute and fun in a weird way.
Yeah. Very what's his Johann Vasquez or whatever the guy did. That sort of stuff. Yeah, that's super cool. Well, anything else to promote that you want to talk about before I let you go back to your life?
Well, I have the Cloakroom issue 2 is on Kickstarter right now. It's got 6 new short stories in it. They're all really good and very different and kind of like fun twists on zombie stories. And, like there's one that's just basically this woman meets the personification of all of her darkest thoughts of herself. And kind of like she descends into her own mind, and it's very cool, kind of esoteric shit. And there's one called Instinct, which is a really cool zombie story where, a zombie seems to have taken a liking to a little boy who's not a zombie and kind of established a sort of parental relationship there, and sort of the weird kind of twisted things you think might happen in a zombie apocalypse that go along with that kind of a cute story.
That's cool.
There's like a disgruntled demon who's like in literal corporate hell who just tries to get out of his job torturing people. And it's what I love about it is I've really enjoyed working with other creators and exercising that part of my brain, because I'm also a writer and I can't ever be like, you should write it this way. It's more just trying to help them make the best version of their thing that they want to make. And I've really enjoyed doing it. So that's a lot of fun. There are 2 issues available. So it's 13 total stories and something like 110 pages. And
I assume you can get the first one through the second Kickstarter as well?
Yes.
As a stretch
goal?
Cool.
Yes, sir. And then,
awesome.
Cicada Samurai, the first full issue, will be live in, I'm thinking, about 2 months. But the pre-launch page is up. So if anyone's interested in taking a look, you can follow it and you'll get the alert.
It looks super cool. Very, very cool.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'm excited to check that out for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jerry. This has been a blast.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, anytime at all. All right. Thanks again, man. Much appreciated.
There you have it, my conversation with Jerry Carita. It's a good one. And I guess I forgot to mention, it's episode 100. I didn't bring it up in the intro because I totally forgot. But we have reached our 100th episode. As I mentioned before, if you tune into the show, we did have a previous 100th episode when we had an older format, which we did reviews of rather sort of deep dives into the history of comic book specific characters before we moved it to a strictly interview format. So when I did that, I renumbered everything, and we lost 100. It just became the interview with me. Seems kind of pretentious to have my own interview on my own show, but it was sort of a way to celebrate episode 100 back in the day. So you can always go back and listen to that one if you really want to experience it. But, I kind of thought 100's a good milestone. It's kind of the second time we've hit it. But, I just wanted to, we don't need to celebrate every crazy milestone. I just thought it was a nice conversation with Jerry, good representative of the series, kind of timed out that way with the way I had people scheduled to be in the show. And very excited to bring you 100 episodes of quality interviews, and hopefully we got thousands more to come for eternity, to quote Rick and Morty, for forever, 1,000 years, Graphic Histories Podcast. Tune in next week for episode 101, in which I talk with the creator of Darkwing Duck, Tad Stones. Darkwing Duck is a very big part of my childhood, a very big part of many people's childhood, and he has some great stories. We had some great conversations about his life and career. And if you're into Darkwing Duck, this is the episode for you. A lot of insight into that series. And he also worked on the Return of Jafar and King of Thieves Aladdin films, which I thought were underappreciated for fantastic continuations of those movies, that as they were direct-to-DVD sort of things, they never really got as much due as they deserved. But they were really, really good. Fantastic stories. And, great conversation. So tune in next week for that. But in the meantime, stay safe, have fun, and read some comics. Go read those comics. They're waiting for you. That pile's not getting any smaller.
The Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.